We live in a racist country.
Yeah, there we are. And we're back. And we've got a great deep dive for you guys tonight. Let's get right into it. A fan base is a powerful thing. Everybody knows this. Your fan base is the foundation for your success when it comes to nearly everything. It determines if you make it big or go home hungry. It determines how people see and how people feel about your story or product. It is the base that you build any structure on. It's the foundations, and if those foundations are stable, especially if those foundations are at an adult age with a flexible income and free time, you'll do pretty well. Fans can be pretty crazy, though. Mob mentality is real, and as we've discussed before, there is some level of toxicity in nearly every fandom. And even if you manage to build a wholesome fan base, you could still lose them at any minute if you don't play your cards right. Tonight, we want to dive into the powers of a fan base, particularly drop culture, mass mobilization, and content rejuvenation, and the Game of Thrones effect. And while usually a driver for success, the achievement of a fan base can be weaponized pretty easily as well. All it takes is one bad announcement or inconvenient truth, and a whole flurry of toxic fans are sliding into someone's DMs and harassing the shit out of them. Kelly Marie Tran is a good example of this in the Star Wars universe.
Oh, yeah.
She wrote an entire essay on how Star Wars fans essentially chased her out of the series simply because of her race, and this was in the past 10 years. Kevin, does this level of toxicity have anything to do with a franchise like Star Wars? Do you know any other similar examples?
Yeah, I think any sort of IP or franchise that has, start craving fans, even Trekkies, right? They can get pretty crazy. I think it hurts also the fan bases that are generally good people, and meaning that it paints a bad stigma on them. Like, it's almost weird. Like, if you're like a Star Wars fan or a fan of certain thing, someone might think you're an asshole, and you're not. You just like this. You're just being lumped in with those people who are actually toxic and terrible shitheads.
Rick and Morty.
Yeah. I think fans take things too personally sometimes, especially for things that aren't real, that they have no domain over other than their support. There are rare cases where fans are right with their vitriol, i.e. Sonic the Hedgehog, but all in all, the toxicity does more harm than good. Fans can influence or even hurt the creative direction of a show, like Arrow. Cyberpunk devs, like, for instance, even to the point of getting death threats, like the Cyberpunk devs and countless other game developers within the industry. I think Destiny's happened a couple times. Throw a rock at a game company and someone's received death threats over something some gamer didn't like.
Yep.
And also too,
that happened with the recasting with Peter Parker in the new Spider-Man game.
Yes.
We talked about that the other week, where they were getting death threats just because he
didn't look like how they wanted.
Yeah,
right. He had a different
virtual
face.
character looks different.
No, and the thing was too, it's the most bizarre, shocking case or turning events. They didn't like the one white face didn't look like the other white face.
Right.
Because he was still just a white male, generic white bro. Like it did.
To be fair, the news. Peter Parker, he looks like he has a very punchable face. Like, I just don't like how he looks. But still, it's certainly nothing I'm going to send death threats over.
It's a fucking video game face.
Right.
What this has no impact on your actual life. Like,
if it does, you need to readdress those whatever decisions you made to get to this point.
Right. Yeah. I don't know where you are in your life, but if it does, you've got other issues. I think toxic gaming communities not being inclusive, are turning people, away, mainly women, away from games and franchises, right? Like, I've talked to, like, how many times, like, women my age or just in general, where they're like, yeah, I never really got into games because, a lot of guys are like assholes or, were harassing me or things like that, so it does more harm than good. It's like, why can't I find a girl that likes video games? But at the same time, it's like, why do girls like video games? That's right.
It's very true.
And I do believe to an extent fans should hold showrunners or creative directors accountable to deliver a great product or experience. You are essentially paying for it, but it should be within moral reason and not because you're a racist fuck or a sexist fuck or any sort of xenophobic piece of trash that goes wrong with your beliefs to sort of, I guess, ostracize people because they're different from you.
Right.
Yeah.
And toxic fan bases. Jake, what are your thoughts before I go any further?
Yeah, I mean, there are tons of different ones, and they do usually drive people away, like Kevin was saying. Like, I think, some of them that I think of has always been, because I grew up in the deep South where sports teams, so I think about this question even more so outside of the geek realm. Well, not even geek realm, because I still think there's sports junkies are nerds. They just don't realize it. Like, they're fucking nerds. Like, if you know how many yards Peyton Manning had in one of his MVP seasons, you're a fucking loser. Like, so it's just one of those where, like, they just don't look at it like that, right? And so, like, and there's some of the most toxic culture or toxic fan bases around, as usually with sports teams, and specifically with women, and that's a big one too. That's why I think a lot of girls don't like sports, or they'll think like it's a more masculine thing, because like sports fans for the longest time have been like, yo, bros, fucking sports, and all that, and it's very like a masculine kind of a thing. And so like, but at the end of the day, like, I think anybody should be able to enjoy sports, especially like, especially things like football, baseball, or anything that takes some sort of technique or some sort of like, or basketball too has been growing in popularity amongst like all genders for the past couple of years. Like the WNBA seen more success now than it has in a long time. Right. And so I think things are getting more inviting, but I think like, there's tons of like really just toxic fan bases. Like I gave the little gentle nod to Rick and Morty. I think if you tell somebody Rick and Morty is one of your favorite shows, they automatically think you're some sort of pompous dick. And it's just like, no, like Rick does not resonate with me. I like Rick. I like Morty. I like Summer. I like Jerry. I like the
But if you don't like the show, it's probably because you don't get it and the humor is like above your level.
Exactly. Like, it's probably because you're just not smart. That's why you don't get it, because you're stupid. Yeah. But like, there's tons of like weird toxic cultures that people don't think about. I think like people who are like Apple elites, right? Like, everybody got an iPhone? Climb off that pedestal. Like, like
all of our phones look the fucking same. Who cares? Get over it.
Exactly. Right.
Well, I mean, that kind of moves me into my next question, because Apple's a big culprit of this. But drop culture is a big part when it comes to the power of a fan base. Apple elites and even we see with like the Xbox and the Series X and launch week this week, you've had people reselling these consoles for over $1,000 and kind of just manipulating the laws of capitalism, supply and demand to their favor, just to kind of make out like bandits. And as we were saying earlier, Kev, earlier in the show, like, these consoles are not worth $1,000, okay? And they're not, the machines that you are buying are not anything that couldn't be beaten out by a really high-end PC. You're not buying a console made of gold.
No, well, the thing is, Dodd, the reason why they're not worth $1,000 is because they price them at $500. And the only reason, like shoes or something or whatever piece that, like, for instance, like off-white Jordans, those are worth $1,000. I mean, they're not worth $1,000, but they can sell for $1,000 because they don't make those anymore.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing with drop culture, and that's one of the big differences in sneakerheads, I think, in gamers, and especially like there is some overlap. Don't get me wrong. There's a reason why they started selling Xboxes and computer parts on fucking StockX, right?
Right.
Like the latest NVIDIA chip is still on StockX for 2 times the retail price, and it's still sold. It's still selling because NVIDIA hasn't restocked them, right?
Yeah.
And so that's the biggest thing, and that's a huge power of like that. I think a lot of us don't realize that we have, is that we have the ability to make something triple and quadruple in value just because we want it that badly, and that's the whole power of drop culture, is that it's just like, or like that forced supply and demand. Supreme launches every Thursday, and it may be something new and you may not get the thing that you wanted, but they launch new things literally almost every Thursday. So it's like
they have a new headband.
This one, they only launched this one time. You had to buy this off StockX. It was super limited, super limited. And so like, but no, like there is a lot of like, crossover within there. But like, I think like at least with sneakers, like there's limited amounts of them, right? Like I made the joke about Red Octobers earlier, right? But like, there's only so many Red Octobers, and Yeezy's not working with Nike anytime soon. Like he's been with Adidas for a very long time. And so there's shoes like that they may never make again. But like Sony's shipping out more PlayStations.
Right.
Like it may not be until next year, but Sony like Shoney's. But Sony's shipping these bad boys out. Microsoft's shipping them out. Like you're gonna get one. Like everybody's gonna get
this stuff is pervasive too, because like you talk about drop culture, but like the same thing happens in Pokemon when they have like they'll have Zarude. Zarude's a legendary Pokemon that was launched and was given as an exclusive gift to people that bought a ticket to Pokemon Coco in Japan. Now, as soon as that came out, people were like paying like $15, $20, $30 for a Pokemon that one couldn't be used in VGC. Like you can't use this competitively. It's only just a thing that's like nice to have in your collection. And like anybody that was experienced in Pokemon at all was like, this is going to come out in America. It's just going to be a release at GameStop or something like that. Like it's just going to be something they roll out later to keep people interested. Just wait. But it's new. It's flashy. It's there, and people will pay oogles and googles of money for it. That's what elevates something like people an Xbox from to twice its value.
That's what's tricky about, and Kevin, you backtracked on it a little bit, which I noticed is like it's hard to say what something's worth because people will pay it, and if people will pay it, that's what it's worth. That's what I've always been taught, and so it's just one of those where like as long as people will accept scalpers are going to be a thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But a great fan base can bring to life new life to an old series. 50 Shades of Grey, for example, started out as Twilight fan fiction. That's a true story. Twitch creates content from content creators creating content from existing content. So, like, again, fan bases can end up, regurgitating and creating new content that ends up creating a life of its own. Can you think of any examples, Jake, in particular, of how fan bases can expand on existing fandoms?
Oh, yeah. Like, I think there's plenty of awesome examples where, like, we've seen the power of a fan base bring back a show, make a show into a movie. I'll get into those a little bit later because I have a lot of really good examples there. But I think, as far as like being a medium piggybacking off of another medium, Twitch is a great example, but YouTube's great as well. But look at what streaming alone has done for games like Among Us. This is a game that came out, like over a year ago, almost 2 years ago, I think, right? Like 2017. And so, which would be 3. Holy shit, the time. Anyway. And so like, this game came out years ago and then streaming brought it into a whole new level. Like people saw it. People were like, oh, I love that. Let's play it. And so then it, now it's, one of the most watched and talked about games of the year. And so that's like definitely somewhere where like if it would have never wound up on Twitch and Twitch isn't a thing, Among Us is dead. You know what I mean? Like it never becomes the thing that it did. For years, books essentially were a medium that, facilitated what movies were going to come out. The best-selling books of that year usually always got made into a movie down the road. And like, I know that that's like such an easy one to kind of like piggyback off of each other, but that's where like, the power of like the New York top selling list or whatever for novels ends up being a direct like lead into what movies we see coming out into the next couple of years. Right. Yeah. Social media, even. I think TikTok has opened up more cultures and more fan bases and different things to people who would have never seen it, similar to what Reddit's done for a lot of people as well. And even Facebook to some extent. I mean, we can all hate, Facebook, but at the same time, like it's definitely like open doors to either people being in huge echo chambers or, help them branch out and meet people and backgrounds and fandoms that they never would have seen. And then streaming services, I just always have to go back to not just Twitch and things like that, but Netflix. I think a lot of things can get a second wind whenever it comes onto a new streaming service. Look at Avatar. I think Avatar, The Last Airbender was just it's a great example of a show that has been done, right?
Yeah.
And the fans of it were already fans of it, and they had been screaming.
Look at Legend of Korra. Nobody watched Legend of Korra.
Legend of Korra is a good example.
Honestly, Legend of Korra is better than Avatar now.
Yeah.
In my opinion, and I would have never ever seen any of it if I hadn't given that second wind on Netflix.
Exactly. And so a lot of things will see their second wind on these, like these new streaming services. And Netflix, it's really bizarre. I see an old show or movie that I've seen years ago in the Netflix top 10 every week. And I'll be like, what the fuck is that doing in the top 10? And then I'll realize, it just came to Netflix. Yeah. And so it's a whole new audience just got opened up to it.
Looking at Gen Z and Friends.
I know, right?
Yeah.
The fucking kids just saw Friends, and now they're
I know. I was at a store the other day or something. I was getting like some shit for my Mac, but we were like stopping at a clothing store, and it was like, just like a bunch of Friends memorabilia, and I'm like, oh, this is weird. Like, like I remember Friends coming back was like kind of nostalgic for me. I would like watch it on TV, but I was never like that like attached to it again. I was like, that, to me, my opinion, I'm gonna get dragged for this. It doesn't hold up, but. I think I just to piggyback off of what you're saying, Jake. I think streaming platforms are sort of the biggest places where games get elevated to high acclaim or a new level. Like you said, Among Us. No one was playing Among Us. This game has been out for like 2 or 3. I don't even know. I think Dodd said 8. I'm saying 2 or 3. No one knows. It's not a new game. That's what we know. But it got a big Twitch streamer picked it up, played it. It had hella fun, and then it just kind of snowballed from there. And then AOC picks it up, so it happens. You've seen it happen with Fortnite. Like Fortnite was out for years, turned into a completely different game, and then Ninja gets on there with Drake and Travis Scott, and then blows the fuck up.
Now it's fucking Fortnite.
And ironically, Fortnite has died away because of the sort of lack of fan base, and fans sort of going on to other things, not being able to keep up. It even happens with shows getting multiple seasons, longer than what the showrunner was expecting to even do, not necessarily from a studio standpoint, but even from a creative one, like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was supposed to end 2 seasons ago. It got an additional 2 ones because they wanted to see, fans wanted to see more of it. New Girl was another show. That was supposed to, a show that was supposed to end like 2, Lost. Tons of shows.
J.J. Abrams straight up was like, yo, we only had enough ideas for 3 seasons, and they told us we needed 7.
Yeah. Even going back to the 90s, X-Files. X-Files was supposed to end like in season 5. They had a whole 2 seasons that didn't have Mulder and Scully,
that show.
Terrible, by the way. But my point is that I think, if fans sort of drive these things, one, because they're going to pay for it, and 2, if you have an audience to watch, showrunners or studios, developers, they're going to put stuff out for you. Look at games that are kept alive just from like constant rolling of content, Ubisoft titles all the way to, you name it.
Well, I mean, you talk about getting a new life on Netflix. I mean, not just Avatar, but think about The Witcher.
Yes.
Getting completely, new audience there, and stuff like that. I don't know. I think that
it drove me to go from watching the show to playing the game, and I had never played the game. But I am an RPG fan, and I'd always heard The Witcher was great. I just never put in the time, right? But the show was so good, and I was like, this universe is pretty dope. I want to learn more about it. I'm going to play the game. So I started with The Witcher 3, and holy fuck, probably one of the greatest games I ever played. I loved it. So it's just interesting how streaming can really bring a new fan base to something that's been around,
Right.
For sure. Well, one thing is for sure, a positive and wholesome fan base will get you far. Recently, I have discovered a few shitposting groups online from various fandoms. And let me tell you one thing, Avatar fans are so much better than Marvel fans. Marvel fans are fucking toxic as hell. Oh my God. Shout out to Marvel shitposting. You guys are all toxic as fuck. Mostly because Marvel is constantly competing with DC. And everybody in there is just constantly bashing all of DC people. There's a plethora of slurs that are used for all kinds of derogatory things, but Avatar doesn't have any competitors like that. So Avatar fandom's like, yo, do you think I look like more like Zuko or Aang? You know, like everybody in there is just really sweet and nice and fun. And when someone does act like shitty, they're like, you know, like I don't know. It's the wholesome people attack the mean people and kind of
someone didn't have their tea.
Right. Exactly, right? You know, they're you know, they attack with the ferocity of the Fire Nation towards toxic people in their fandom. But the Marvel fans, if you ask them, you know, like, hey, you know, why are you guys always so toxic? They're like, have you seen DC? They, you know, piss on Stan Lee's grave, and it's like that's not an excuse.
No.
Do you get what else can a fan base do for you, and how does that compare to ones that sour their reputation, Kev?
Yeah, for sure. I think what a fan base can do for you is bring in more fans. Like I said, if they're wholesoming and welcome and inclusive, more people are going to want that, especially if it's something good or interesting. You know, like I mentioned before, a reason, like the reason a lot of women weren't into video games early on, especially like in the 2000s or 90s or whatever, is because there was a lot of misogynistic, toxic, you know, culture in that. And you know, of course, no one wants to be a part of it. Even if you love video games, you know, you almost get scared away from it. Yeah. I had to look far and wide and think of examples where I've had positive experiences with wholesome fan bases, because they can be pretty bitter and rough. But it's rare. For me, my experience, I try to lean on like games I played. I'll just go ahead and ironically enough, I've had positive game experiences on Fortnite, where, like, you know, if you kill anybody in any other game, your mother's getting insulted or you're getting called a racial slur. I'm looking at you, Call of Duty. But I remember I'd killed somebody in Fortnite and he like sent me a LOL or something and said GG. There was another time it happened, and apparently I was on the island with some kid or some person before, and they were like, hey, I just saw you, GG, and you know, stuff like that. Or it'll be random games like Need for Speed. Some guy just seen us saying nice car, can I join your squad or whatever, you know. It's like it's random shit like that. But I think like the really diehard fans that or fan bases that do exist, I haven't really found too many wholesome ones, to be honest.
That's fair. Yeah. Jake, what about you?
Well, I mean, they can save a show. Yeah. That's one of the biggest things that I think a fan base can do, is they can save things that everybody loves, right? Like Brooklyn Nine-Nine went from being canned to picked up on a whole new network in 24 hours, mostly due to a huge fan outcry. Arrested Development fans sent bananas to the showrunners until they finally got a season 3. Now that's not toxic, but that's like such a great way to represent, like, you know, there's money in the banana stand, damn it.
Yeah.
And so, like, Veronica Mars fans literally raised the money for their own movie. They ran a Kickstarter campaign and Christian Bale led it, and the fans funded their own Veronica Mars movie. And so there's plenty of ways that I think, you know, the power of a fan base can rally around a project because they love the story, they love the creators, they love whatever it may be, and continue it going. You know, like I look at Bill and Ted was another one that was mainly due to Keanu's, you know, coming back and the fans saying, yo, let's get another Bill and Ted in the books, right? Adult Swim fans almost single-handedly brought back shows like Futurama and Family Guy. Family Guy died and then went over to, you know, Cartoon Network or, you know, Adult Swim. And it was the viewers there and the constant, like, you know, the outcry afterwards, like, how the fuck did this show get canceled when Fox is still playing God knows what on Sunday? Yeah. And so, like, you know, because people, and let me preface that with Family Guy used to be a really good show. And Futurama is always going to be one of the best, in my opinion. Oh, yeah. And it went from dead to back alive to dead to back alive, all because of the fans. The fans always kept that one going. Community found a new home because of the fans' outcry after it was canceled. Now, the season on Yahoo was garbage, in my opinion, but at least it brought back Dan Harmon, and they tried to finish it off nice, right? Yeah. But then there's things like Rick and Morty that I believe could have lost fans due to the toxicity of its fans. Right. Like, I think like, you know, like, I think enough people, like, it's one of those things where, like, I think there's people who should like the show and would, if not for the fact that they feel like there's some sort of like air about saying that they're fans of Rick and Morty, right? And I think a lot of gaming communities do the same thing where everyone's like, get good, LOL. And it's like, dude, no, like sometimes like take time, talk to people, tell them like, oh, did you try this? You know, you need to make sure you save before that boss. Like, you know, like there's so much, you know, more to being a fan than just telling somebody, LOL, get wrecked, motherfucker. You know, I just, so like, I don't get like why people like, oh, I'm a Halo fan. And it's like, yeah, but like, do you just play it? You know, have you ever taught anybody how to play Halo? Have you ever like sat down with someone and showed them like, you know, the differences in the weaponry, or like, you know, have you ever brought anybody up? That's how I look at being a wholesome fan. Myself personally, is that you elevate anyone into the fan base. Did you bring anyone else in? It's almost like converting them like Christians. Were you evangelical? Like, did you take that approach, or did you just tell them they were going to hot in hell? You know what I mean? Like, what did you tell them?
And also with you.
True. Yeah. No, I think you're right, Jake. I think I looked at it from a more narrow scope. I think, like, for instance, various fan base, like Stranger Things fans are pretty cool. Like, I have like, I'm subscribed to various number of like fan bases on Reddit, even surprisingly Red Dead fans. I know there's been grievers and stuff, but they just do that just to be trolls. But all in all, like the fans there are pretty positive. I think sometimes you get sort of out, or the more toxic ones are a little bit louder, but for sure, I think there is certainly a lot of good positive fan bases out there. If you look at it from top to bottom.
Overall, because like Madden, you go play Madden online and you just do a quick game with somebody, you're probably going to get somebody that's going to send you a message calling you some type of racial slur, or you know, talking about fucking your mother, right? But the Madden Ultimate Team subreddit, which is a community of thousands of people, they're all super fucking helpful. People trade cards, give away cards. They're super nice to each other. There's tons of casual games where people will be like, does anybody want to just try out, you know, different schemes with each other? I've had people literally just, or I used to see people literally just play each other so that they could unlock achievements. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's one of those where like, it's, I think all communities can have some good fans. You just got to look for them sometimes, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
Yeah. Well, it's not only your fans that can ruin your reputation, though. You can too. You, as in like the people that are running the property. In fact, turning on your fans is the best way that you could do that. Whether it's through a disappointing end or a terrible story direction, fan bases can vanish overnight. Jake, do you have any good examples of this?
You said it earlier, man. Game of Thrones. That's the first one that comes to mind. Like, I think we've janked on Game of Thrones a few times during this.
Yeah, I was doing a little foreplay, but this is the where it really comes down to it.
Well, no, it's just it's a great example of something that had probably the most hype in the fucking universe, and then just completely shit the bed. Like in one season, this went from being everyone's essentially Star Wars, you know, like kind of like esque fan base where like, you know, this thing could live on forever, to now I think HBO's even thinking like, are we going to keep doing Game of Thrones shows? Like, I know we had some prequels and shit lined up, but I don't know, man. That last season was fucking garbage. And so I think of Game of Thrones. I think of Scrubs. Scrubs is another one that comes to mind. Scrubs is such a good show. And then the last couple seasons just like suck so bad that like it's just everybody kind of like forgets that it was a good show. Lost is another one that's like phenomenal. Lost has the pilot episode is possibly one of the greatest pilot episodes. Honestly, I think if I was running a film class and I was sitting down and I was going to teach somebody how to draw people in and make a pilot episode of a show, I would show them Lost. I think any director, anybody who's trying to think of how to build suspense, but also like lay out some character growth in just one episode and kind of like bring people in, fucking watch the first episode of Lost. And so there's so many shows that have come out throughout the years that either the creators ran out of steam or the creators left. That's a big thing that happens a lot, where the showrunners will just call, you know, they'll fucking dip out. And so there's so many things where like, you know, the show ends up just taking a total different direction that the fans hate. And, you know, it causes a purge essentially in their fandom, which can lead to them being a huge nothing burger. I think of games like Destiny. Destiny was supposed to be the next big thing. No one fucking Destiny 2. Like I think some people bought it, but like I didn't, and I bought Destiny 1 and was a big fan. But
Destiny has its own hardcore fan base.
It has its own,
but it's not its Halo. It's not Halo like it was supposed to be.
It was supposed to be Halo.
No,
yeah,
right.
And so most of the Alien games, think about that for a minute. Like almost every Alien game, except for like the scary one that we talked about last week, and a few other ones, have been so fucking awful that like the Alien franchise hasn't been able to get a game off. And the Mass Effect, we talked about that earlier, and Fallout even, both had such stinker games in their lineups eventually that it caused fans to rethink their fandom. Fallout 76 made people go, what the fuck is this? Like, I did not sign up for this, you know? And so, it turned me off of Fallout, and I literally have a Fallout build for a PC that I'm on right now. Like, like Fallout themed. I'm like a Fallout fanboy, and 76 got like maybe a few hours out of me, and I was just like, this is not what we like, you know? And of course, they've made updates since then. So you think the power of a fan base is that we do say a lot with our dollars. And so Fallout 76 falling on its face, Bethesda had to hit the drawing board. They're even coming out with a new Still of Dawn update that's coming out soon that's supposed to bring it back to, like, people are saying it's getting back to Fallout 4, Fallout 70, you know, like New Vegas feel. And so they're adding NPCs and stuff. So like that's the power of a fan base. You know what I mean? Like you can make a video game, a AAA video game at that, go from like, oh, we, like here it is, and then a year later it actually become the game that you really wanted.
Yeah. Kev, what do you think? When is there a way that you can disappoint your fans by just taking a wrong direction?
Yeah, I think I mentioned it earlier, but Fortnite's certainly done that. They've just they did this weird thing where they were like, okay, we're going to appeal to people who, like, i.e. younger audience, because we're going to roll content out every single day. But at the same time, someone like me who has a job, kind of like two jobs, honestly, who can't sit here and keep up with these constant meta changes and content updates, I get sort of drawn away from, like, I can't keep up with this. I can't, like, it was a game that, unless you were a professional, like, Fortnite player or close to it, you could not play this game. It just wasn't fun anymore. We mentioned the Avengers game, that 96% of its users or players, fan base. And like Jake mentioned earlier, Mass Effect was another one. The reason I didn't play Anthem was because I was like, unless this game is stellar and has great reviews, I'm not buying it because I'm boycotting it. They ruined something that was near and dear to my heart to make this game, so it better be amazing. And it wasn't. And like we talked about Destiny earlier, Destiny's great. It's a good game. But compared to what it was, especially with what Bungie has done, I think it's kind of underachieved. Now, I haven't played some of the recent updates, and mostly because, like we talked about, what they do is they bring out, like Destiny 1. The game came out, it was incomplete, it was lackluster, and then the second year rolls around, boom, content comes out, and it's a great game. And then they did the same thing with Destiny 2, but by that time I got on Destiny 2 and I was so overwhelmed I didn't even want to touch it. I was like, why couldn't you keep this momentum going initially? Like I have other interests. I don't want to do this now. It's over. It's like someone, like your ex trying to win you back or something. Like, look, I've improved myself. It's like, it's too late.
Yeah. It'll happen. They can take those directions and just completely tank a fandom.
You hate to see it.
You hate to see it. Well, that'll about do it for our deep dive. But we've got a great top Zen for you guys as well. It's been a long week. It's been full of a very unique drama. If you're a washed-up Mandalorian actress on Mayan Space or Only Clans, you might have mentioned something about someone stealing someone's success from somebody else.